we have now the next guest in the studio. So I would like to welcome Rishi from TrusTrace.
Thank you.
All right. And the sound is all set. You have good volume on them.
Able to hear me?
That.
Yes.
Right. Excellent. So Rishi, you're from TrusTrace.
Yes.
And lots of questions about what TrusTrace does. I will say maybe congratulations on the name, because it does tell me a little bit about what TrusTrace is about. Maybe you can help us understand what's the primary service that TrusTrace is working with.
So we basically help brands and retailers identify the various players in the supply chain and measure the sustainability metrics, right? So for example, to understand where the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers are, what are the environmental, social, and ethical parameters that are being measured. And based on that, how do we improve from there, right? You sort of arrive at a baseline and say, okay, these are the things that I need to sort of change over a period of time. Some brands or retailers already have targets that they have taken. And then we see how we can accelerate that journey or help them accelerate that journey to get to being very sustainable.
Interesting. So it sounds like you're actually doing some degree or maybe a large degree of supply chain mapping?
Yes. We map the supply chain. So there is, first of all, to identify the various factories, yes. And the second aspect is at a product level, brands are, they're looking at quality, they're looking at different certifications, making claims in terms of being whether organic or recycled and so on. So how do you sort of improve the quality of data over there? And then based on the various locations, how do you sort of take action, right? So that is what we focus on.
And how deep into the supply chain do you go?
So technology-wise, you can go as deep as possible. The challenge, of course, is how do you get people down the value chain to start sharing information, right? That is relevant, because the brands are far removed from, say, the yarn suppliers or even the raw material suppliers. So how do you get everybody to come onto a single platform and share that information so that you can start making decisions? So that is the, I would say, the challenge. But technology-wise, we have something that can go. We've had cases where we've gone as low as tier 7, tier 8, and so on from the brand.
So let me ask you, because you said technology-wise a few times, and you talked about a platform.
Correct.
So can you help us understand what are you talking about? What technology and what platform?
So when you're talking about a platform, it is basically to enable multiple players to come onto the same sort of platform to sort of share the data. In terms of technology, how do we make it easier for them? How do we validate the data that they're putting in? So we're using technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, bots, and so on. So for example, if I go down to a yarn or maybe a raw material supplier in India or Vietnam, we've had cases where they said, hey, I don't have a computer to share data. I have a physical certificate. So can they take a photo on WhatsApp and send it? Can I then use that data? Everybody is very comfortable using, let's say, Excel sheets there. So can they send that data, and can we use data from there to actually make sense, right? So those are the kind of different technologies that we're combining with basic platform to enhance the quality of data and then make decisions from there.
So TrusTrace is actually taking all these disparate types of information.
Right.
And it's your team that actually is then translating that somehow into the common platform. So you're actually doing the translation of that information.
Yes. So to a great extent, I would say there are enough and more sort of standards in the market, auditing bodies in the market, but they are all very, very disparate. What we are trying to do is combine everything. So for example, you have social audits that happen separately, but they are on a different system. You have environmental audits that are separate. Then you have product level data that is sitting somewhere else on ERPs or PLM systems. So what we are trying to do is how do we combine this, make sense of this data, and then help the brands and then eventually the consumers make the right decisions.
Okay. And to what extent do you get into, we've heard today about tracer and forensic technology.
Right.
We just heard about RFID, QR codes. How does that work into your scheme?
Yeah, so our system can again tag into many of these. So like when, again, going back to the whole platform story. So we don't want to be, creating or starting something all over from scratch. There are systems available already doing it. I mean, I just heard you talk with Rice earlier. So we have been sort of, in discussions with them. Then there are other DNA tracers or RFID companies that we have partnerships with. So we help, once we have that, we integrate that data. So we work with, these suppliers, et cetera, to deploy some of these technologies so that we can gather that data into our platform and process that data. So yes, we already have these partnerships in place.
And you're connecting this data to the SKU, to a product level?
At a product level, yes. So we're using multiple, most of these technologies to actually connect maybe at a garment level or at even a lot level or a batch level, right? And then take it from there.
Okay. And how long has TrusTrace been around? And very briefly, how did you get this idea? Where did this start?
So we've been around for about 4 years now. While I am in Sweden, I've been here, and a few of my co-founders are in India, originally from India as well. So we saw the stark contrast in terms of how things were approached here in terms of environmental and social aspects versus what we saw back in India, right? One of my co-founders actually comes from one of the largest textile hubs in Asia, and we've seen groundwater being polluted. I had a lake next to my house catching fire because of chemicals in them, right? And these had a profound effect on us. And that's when we said we had a background in technology, and we thought, how can we use technology to improve these systems? How do we reach out to the consumers in the Western world who are using all these garments that are produced there, right? And also connect the brands, the retailers, everyone onto a single system. So that is where the idea of TrusTrace was born. It started off very small, and we wanted to try and see if we can affect the local systems in India, but we realized the problem is much, much larger. So.
Right. Excellent. And just quickly, to give us an understanding, to what extent is your technology and your work in a pilot phase versus launched and out in the market?
Oh, it is completely out, and it's been in production, as we say, for the last 2.5 years. We started working with very forward-looking brands like Philippa K and Houdini to start with. I mean, they were great ambassadors and helped us build the basic product. Then we had brands like Fjällräven and Icebug and others come on. And right now, of course, we're working with brands as big as Decathlon, right? Tracing all their natural fibers globally across 3 continents. So that is the level that we are working with.
And if you could say, to wrap it up, 3 of your biggest challenges that you see being solved in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
The 3 challenges, if you say, the biggest challenge, like I mentioned earlier, is how do I get people to collaborate? How do we get people to share data, right? So I think that would be a very big challenge, especially when we go into certain Asian countries and other players. So how do we make them understand that this is not something where people are going to hold a stick and tell them, hey, you are going wrong, but it's more to do with saying, hey, we need to improve this, right? But over the last 3 years, we've seen a drastic change. People who said, hey, we're not going to share any data are now coming back and saying, okay, listen, this is here to stay. We need to do this. The second aspect, of course, is collaboration amongst peers. One day, maybe an Inditex and an H&M will collaborate to say, hey, we need to make this a better place, right? We need to help solve a lot of problems. So I would say that kind of collaboration is another big challenge. I hope that gets sorted. And the final one I would say is can we come to a common understanding? Everybody is working in silos in multiple places saying, okay, this is how I'm going to measure something. Someone else says, oh, this is how you need to measure it. But if we can identify a common method to measure all this and collaborate on technology as well. So I would say this would solve a massive problem for everyone.
Thanks. Thanks for those messages. And
thank you.
I think they weave very well into a lot of what we've been talking about and hearing about today. So
perfect.
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for coming down to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
By an extreme coincidence, we happen to have a brand that, as I understand it, has applied TrusTrace's services.
Yes, so right. we will be speaking with Evelina from Residus next. So,
right,
yes.
right. Thanks, Rishi, for coming down.
Perfect. Thank you so much.